We haven't really done such a great job on prolonging life. But the question is really, what is the quality of that life? If I'm living to be 82 or 83, okay, all good and well. But if the last 30 years of my life I'm crippled with arthritis and I'm on multiple medications, that's not really good quality of life. So I think people are looking for alternatives. They're looking for non-invasive, safer things to take, and to do.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today.
Joe Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and host of the Hard Way podcast. I got my buddy Brett Hawes on the line. He is a holistic health practitioner. This guy can get anybody healthy. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Good to meet you. Good to hang out. Coming up on 21 years in functional medicine, clinical nutrition, a bunch of other stuff under there. But it's been an interesting ride, watching what's been happening out there in the space, watching people, a lot of new stuff health-wise coming up these days as well, which has been quite interesting. So definitely a lot has changed in 20 years, I'll say that much.
It's funny, my mom was into health and wellness before it was cool back in the early 70s, so it's come a long way. There were no yoga journals back then. Like even 21 years ago, to your point, it was not cool. It was very crunchy. Is that a good way to describe it?
Totally. Yeah, the granola munchers and the hippies, right? Definitely not that anymore, that's for sure.
A friend of mine, a really smart guy, said to me once, no one likes traditional medicine until they're sick. How do you deal with, because I try to reconcile this in my head. I obviously have my mother's belief system, thanks to her, around health and wellness. Let food be thy medicine. Don't rush right away to the doctor. Try to beat it holistically. But when the shit really hits the fan, you find yourself in the emergency room. God forbid.
Well, so if I talk to my younger self, I was pretty hardcore anti-Western medicine, anti-drugs, anti-everything, right? And, you kind of grow up, you mature, you have children, like life changes. And I've sort of come to the position now where, everything has its time and place, right? So, you get hit by a bus, don't come see me. There's not a whole lot I can do for you. So I think where, if you look at Western medicine and how it sort of came from, Western medicine really was born out of like infectious disease. It was born out of injury, trauma. You go back 150 years ago and prior, even 100 years ago, you had so many women dying in childbirth, right? Because there was nothing else you could do. If you started bleeding out, that was it, So I think in that sense, we've come a long way, from an emergency standpoint, from an acute standpoint. And I think that's where Western medicine shines. Unfortunately, where we are today is that we've got a population that is suffering from lifestyle diseases, right? So there's your obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, these types of things, right? And so unfortunately, Western medicine is really not very well equipped to deal with those. So there's no pills for a poor diet. There's no pills for no exercise. The meme that's going around, right? It's like, looks like you have a lifestyle disease. All right, what pill should I take, And that's kind of pretty accurate in terms of the way Western medicine addresses these. So the way I look at it is the kind of stuff I do, people ask me, what is functional medicine? Like, what is that? And it's like, really, instead of running tests to diagnose what you have, we run tests to figure out why you have what you have. And so it's the underlying metabolic issues and these types of things. And so then by assessing function, we can restore function. It's a very long conversation. I don't know how much time you want me to bang on here for, but I'll say this much. People often think of alternative medicine as this sort of like bastard stepchild of Western medicine. And it's really not, because the actual way that we view health and disease is completely different. Western medicine says, the absence of symptoms equals health. And if I can plow you full of drugs and suppress those symptoms, then I've created the illusion of health. Whereas we look at it and go, well, the absence of symptoms doesn't mean health. We want optimal health. We want you to be functioning properly for as long as possible, so restoring function. So it's quite different in terms of the paradigm,
So optimal functioning equals health in the holistic world.
Yeah, I think most people would agree with that. And look, as you get older, there's wear and tear. Your body doesn't repair as well. I mean, you probably know that better than I do, given the space that you're in. So we do the best we can, but I think that we haven't really done such a great job on prolonging life. Like life expectancy and lifespan has just been, marginally increased over the decades. But the question is really, what is the quality of that life? If I'm living to be 82 or 83, okay, all good and well. But if the last 30 years of my life are, I'm crippled with arthritis and I'm on multiple medications, that's not really good quality of life. So I think a lot of people are kind of coming around to the idea now, especially those people that have tried Western medicine, they've gone to see the specialists, taken the drugs, etc. There's a reason why the kind of work I do has become so popular over the last while, because people are looking for alternatives. They're looking for non-invasive, safer things, etc. To take, and to do.
My questions, my statements are going to be taking the other side that population takes, right? Because I'm
sure, yeah, totally.
Even the most stoic individual, they believe in this holistic philosophy. They are inundated with, whether it's a billboard or an ad or a sweet taste or an addiction. I know what I know, and I still look at things that I'm not supposed to be eating,
Sure.
and have a tough time. So we are up against a giant machine. We're the minority, right? Would you agree with that, or?
Well, I think the tide's turning. I mean, I think, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 100%, like we were in the minority, but I think also times have changed, so 20, 30 years ago, we weren't spraying a good portion of our food with chemicals and Roundup and stuff like that. So, I can tell you firsthand that the rate of chronic disease, pick one, right? I mean, there's a whole number to choose from, has skyrocketed. So I think that, I hear what you're saying for sure. But I think it also comes back to, the idea where there's a time and a place for everything. And unfortunately, what has happened and continues to happen is a lot of people are realizing that, unfortunately, their doctors have kind of failed them in a sense, with these types of illnesses that we've been talking about. I'm not talking about, again, a broken leg or some kind of emergency situation, which is different. And so I think because of that, the popularity has grown, and there's a whole bunch of problems that come with the popularity grown, so, but if if you've spent the amount of time that I've spent in the space, I can tell you that the alternative health space has just blown up. Even in the last 10 years, it's become so popular. And I think that there's, again, as I said, like I sort of find myself a little bit in the middle somewhere these days. Obviously, I lean a little bit closer to where I am, but I don't believe that there's one size fits all, and I don't believe that anyone could say the only way that everyone should support their health is to do this thing here. There's so many different ways that you can support your health, and it's really up to you what works best, at the end of the day.
We still are the minority, though. As you were speaking, I was thinking the large food companies have all the budget. And if they have all the if they have all the budget, that means they have most of the customers. And so the customers are buying more Doritos than incense.
Yeah, 100%. I think, to that end, 100% I would agree with you. And, you said it's like we're up against a machine. One of the things that we don't have, like I live in Canada, I'm actually from South Africa. But, one of the things we don't have here is we don't have direct-to-consumer advertising for drugs. So aside from your over-the-counter stuff, maybe some back pain meds or some, Tylenol or something like that, we don't have direct-to-consumer ads. So my wife is American, so I spend a lot of time in the U.S. And every time I hop over the border, holy smokes, it's ads for drugs and meds. And then, you've got cheap food, crappy food. We have the same thing here. So I agree with you. We're definitely... go and look at McDonald's in the morning. Why is there still a lineup like halfway around the block? Despite all the information that we have at our disposal. So,
do you see a world where someday, it's my dream, but do you see a world where someday people want less of that?
I don't know actually, because I think that it's actually up to the individuals, right? So there wouldn't be a market for things if people didn't want it. And a Big Mac tastes great because it's been engineered to taste great. They've done their decades of market research into that. And the same goes for all the other processed foods, junk experiences, all these types of things, So I don't think that there will never be a market for it. But I think that we're kind of at this point now where it's really up to people themselves to decide, like in my space, it's funny, you get locked in these echo chambers sometimes, where it's like, oh, everyone wants to be, healthy, and I just want to help everyone be healthy. And it's like, nope, not everyone wants to be healthy, because if they did, everyone would be healthy, right? So like in reality, it's up to you what choices you actually make as an individual. And when you're presented with a whole bunch of garbage, and then you have to spend more money on whether it's supplements, whether it's organic food, whatever it is. It's hard for some people, and ultimately those choices rest with them.
Tomorrow you're the president and you're motivated to get everybody healthy. What are you putting in place?
Oh gosh, don't ask me that question. I don't know. I think there's a whole bunch more that I'd be doing as president than just food, right? Here's something though that I'll throw out. If that was the situation, here's what I would do. Okay. Is currently we have a healthcare system. This is a global healthcare system. It's not the US or Canada. It's mostly Western nations, but it's actually the whole world. The system that we have, which has its origins in emergency medicine, right? What we've done is we've put that on the front of the healthcare system. So what I would do is I would actually say, well, let's reverse that around, right? Because what's happening is people coming through the emergency system looking for help for lifestyle diseases. The doctors, unfortunately, are not trained in nutrition, 14 to 21 hours, depending where you live, okay? So they don't understand food. They don't understand lifestyle. It's just not what they're trained in, and that's fine. So people are coming through the emergency system first, and then they're coming out the back end, and they're looking for people like me and my colleagues, right? So what I would do is I would actually reverse that around. And I would put functional medicine, nutrition, these types of things on the front of the healthcare system, so that the goal would actually be to get people healthy, not simply manage disease or manage sickness, right? And that means you would have less people coming out the back end requiring drug, surgery, and emergency medicine, right? And that to me is a more sustainable, long-term kind of healthcare system, right? But less money for the drug companies. So hence why we don't have that kind of system.
I mean, yeah, it's going to be a tough one to turn around, but could you see a world, my dream, where we subsidize, salads and healthier foods, organic, free range, and we overtax whipped cream and sprinkles and garbage?
Yeah, I think it's one way. I mean, again, we're trying to tackle a multi-headed Medusa monster, right? So I think there's 100%. I mean, kids, everything starts with children as well. So, trying to encourage healthier diets, better dietary options. Like, I don't know, in the US, I know that you guys have food programs, right, in the schools, which from what I understand are pretty terrible. We don't really have those here. So a lot of the food is really left up to the parents. Whereas if I was in the US, I mean, for sure, I'd be changing those school food programs around like big time. I mean, that seems like the obvious thing to do. But I think there's so many other factors that tie into it, right? Socioeconomic factors, food affordability. Like even in Canada right now, I was reading a report just the other day, and it was saying that 25% of Canadians are food insecure. So the challenge here is like if you got a quarter of your population that's food insecure, like they don't know where their next meal is coming from, it's very difficult for you to throw down options where one is, double or triple the price versus the other one, as you said, which is subsidized. So the crappy food is subsidized and cheap. Well, you kind of have to go with what you can afford, right? So I think there's definitely a socioeconomic factor to this. But as you highlighted as well, like subsidizing one versus the other and subsidizing healthier food, I think would be a good part of that.
What do you think is more important? If we could only get one thing out of the population, is it exercise and sweat, or is it healthy eating? You can only do one.
Oh man, you're hitting me with some tough questions here. You know what? I'll say this, right? I mean, yeah, in a blue sky world, I would love everyone to eat well, but I think that you can still get away with a poor diet if you exercise. Like if you don't move and you still eat well, like sure, you're getting all your nutrients and all that sort of stuff, but it's harder for you in some senses. But that's a tough question, man.
You know what I think about as an analogy? I used to clean swimming pools. I had 700 customers, so I was staring at swimming pools all day, every day for a long part of my life. And I used to compare the pool to the body. And I would say, oh, the pool has a pump and the body has a pump. heart pumps blood, and the pool has a filter, and the body has filters. If I was to dump French fries and coffee and ice cream in the pool all day, every day, and turn off the pump and filter, the pool would turn green. I could run the pump and filter, and I could dump the French fries and ice cream and stuff in there, and it would clean the pool. So you probably could cheat and get away with, although you wouldn't recommend it.
The lack of activity with people these days, it's pretty astounding, so even people that eat well, to tell you the truth, like I see plenty of people in my space, that just don't really exercise. And the mindset is, well, if I just eat well, that's good enough. So I'm just not going to do the other stuff. And it's like, okay, how's it working out for you? And you see that they still suffer from many of the same types of issues. Don't get me wrong. Eating a cleaner diet, organic, et cetera, is still great. But yeah, that's a tough question.
When you meet with patients, what are 3 things that you tell the patients they have to adopt in their life if they want to kill the potential for these lifestyle diseases? What do you give them? What pills do you give them? Quote unquote pills.
So, from the supplement side of things, I don't really, I'll tell you this, right? So I'm very, I've spent a long time getting really good at personalized care, right? So people, typically I work with them for anywhere from 3 to 12 months, usually 6 months. And so it's a bit of a slower kind of approach, right? Because again, we're trying to correct function. We're not just trying to load you up with supplements to, make you look and feel better. Eventually you get there, and eventually, my goal's always been to get you on as fewer supplements as possible. I don't want you to be hooked on 20 supplements for the rest of your life either. But I think that, you bring up the pool analogy, which is it's a great analogy. And we often I'll use the barrel analogy. It's very similar, right? Most people, as we get older, we accumulate more stuff, right, in our body, like life experiences as well. So there's the psychological, emotional stuff, and then there's the physical stuff, right? And wear and tear, and we just get loaded up with more toxins, more whatever. We put on a bit of weight naturally as we get older as well. And so as your barrel, if your body is a barrel and it goes up, and it gets fuller and fuller, eventually you hit a point where, you're full. And when your barrel is full, you have no tolerance for anything else. And so all of the overflow is the symptoms that you experience. So one of the first things that I do pretty well with almost everyone, my wheelhouse has been digestive issues, hormone imbalances, and autoimmune diseases, and kind of how those 3 things intersect, right? So it gets quite complicated pretty quickly. But draining that barrel is a real key first point, right? Because what people are doing is, can you imagine your barrel's full and now you're going, oh, what supplements should I add? What food should I add? I'm just going to add more stuff. And it's like, that's not how it works. If you actually spend a bit of time draining the barrel and give yourself some more headroom, you actually become more tolerant. You find that things like food sensitivities are better. Your inflammation is better. And what's called your allostatic load, right? So your total body load or body burden is actually much lower. And so what you find is, hey, I've lost a few pounds, right? I'm sleeping better. My skin is better, and so on and so forth. And all that can be done in a month or 2, to at least start the process of healing. Because, your body's an incredible piece of machinery, if you want to look at it like that, in the sense that it is self-repairing. There's not a lot of things that are self-repairing, but you have to give it the right environment to self-repair. So, if you're burning the candle at both ends, here's another one that I do pretty well with everyone, is sleep hygiene. So you can't expect to go to bed at like midnight every night and be staring at your phone in bed and then waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and just, grabbing a bagel and a cup of coffee and strapping it to the dashboard and off you go. And like you're going to get healthy. I mean, it just doesn't work like that. So sleep is another real key, important foundational piece. I was fortunate enough to come from a good lineage of very, very good practitioners who were trained by some of the best back in the day. And they would have 4 pillars of health, right? And one of those pillars was sleep. And people often just forget about sleep. They don't think of it. But if your body's a self-repairing machine, the time that it repairs itself is while you sleep. And then, of course, the last piece is, it's kind of weird. I mean, it might sound a little strange coming from me, but I'm not as hardcore about diet these days, if that makes any sense. And what I mean by that is, people are so busy. They got so much stuff going on. They got kids, they got life, they got work. And when you try and put them on these very, very narrow kinds of diets, where it's like you got to cut out 80% of the stuff you're eating and, you're just eating these few things. Most people, it's just too much for them. They just can't stick with it. So I find that if you can, as a starting point, just get onto more of a whole foods type of diet and just cut out the processed stuff, the sugar as much as you possibly can. That's a good starting point, and I think it's doable for most people. So those three things, draining your barrel, lightening your load, sleep, and just cleaning up your diet are probably some really good foundational starting points.
And by the way, there's nothing you said there that's rocket science or should catch anybody off guard. Nobody should resist and say, I can't do, that's ridiculous, that's too fringe. Like, guys, we're not asking for a lot here.
Go to bed at 10. What? Why would I do that? Yeah, I know. But it's funny you say that, because like what I'm seeing in our space, you go and check out what influencers and big people are doing in my space, and holy smokes, man, I look at that and I'm like, wow, the industry itself has actually become very like product focused, and you got to buy all the stuff and you got to do all the stuff to be healthy. And what it's actually doing is it's driving people crazy, because, I teach practitioners as well, just so you know. So I've been teaching at one of Canada's top schools for 17 years. So a lot of the nutritionists that are trained, not just in Canada, but, around the world, a lot of them have come through my classroom. And so in a 1 year or 2 year program, I see a lot of them finish. And then, you can kind of track everyone, right? So nowadays we're all online, we're all hanging out. And you kind of see people that you taught like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And what's interesting now is there's this trend in the health space where it's a term called orthorexia. And so orthorexia is when you're so worried about becoming sick that you actually make yourself sick. So people are so panicked, and it's like, oh my gosh, if I'm not standing on my head every morning, and then I got to meditate for 2 hours, and then I have to, make sure I do yoga and make sure I have this and eat that, and and it was never like that. Like, it was never ever like that up until 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It was never like that. So I think what people have done is they've made things very, very complicated. And it really doesn't have to be that complicated. If you stick to the basics, you're 80% of the way there.
Look, the world goes around because of commerce. And so if we were all just eating apples and running every day and taking cold showers, there wouldn't be a lot of stuff to sell each other.
True.
So that's the problem, is it's one giant selling machine.
Yeah.
How do people find you?
So right now I'm doing a newer show. So my previous show is called Beyond Health. People can still look that up. It's a pretty well-trafficked podcast. There's some good back episodes. These days I've moved on to another show called Onward. And given the challenging times that we're in, so we didn't really chat much about that today, but I have the other half of what I do is I have a pretty long history in the activist world. And I don't mean that tongue-in-cheek or loosey-goosey. I'm pretty much at the forefront here in Canada with some organizations defending natural health products, which are under attack by the government and the drug companies. And there's a bunch of other stuff that kind of are all orbiting around that. So needless to say, Onward is part health, part activism, part politics, part health politics, and all that sort of stuff. So people can go to my Substack. It's onwardpod.substack.com. And I'm pretty much doing everything there these days. I've been lucky that I have been able to find a way with my business partner where we can, we can work a business on the side where I'm not the face of that business. I kind of do a lot of stuff in the background, which is cool. And then I get to do a podcast, which I keep my nose clean, so I don't have affiliates, I don't have products, I don't have sponsors, I got no advertising at all. And it's a real passion project just to try and, give back and serve humanity in whatever way I can.
I love it. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Joe.